Hey y'all! In this video, we're going to get into importing an STL file into VCarve Desktop, VCarve Pro, and Aspire version 11.0 and newer. If you are brand new to Vectric software and you're starting with version 11.0 or newer, or if you have just recently upgraded to version 11.0 or higher, this is the video for you. If you're still using version 10.5 or older, then this is not the video for you. I created a video on importing an STL file with the older interface several years back, and I have linked that video down in the description box of this video. So, if you're using version 11.0 or higher, this is the video you want to watch. So let's go ahead and go inside, get on the computer, and get to work. I'm going to go ahead and create a new file. And this is going to be a single-sided project. I'm going to leave this as is. My width in X is 12 inches. Height in Y is also 12 inches. And the thickness of the material I have on hand is 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to set my Z0 position to the material surface. And slightly different for me, I'm going to go ahead and set my XY datum position to the bottom left corner. My modeling resolution, because I am going to be creating a 3D model, I'm going to go ahead and change that to very high. And here in my material settings, this is where I set my appearance, and I'm going to set this to medium wood with a horizontal grain for good contrast. And I'll click OK. And we have our material here in the center. Now I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the Modeling tab now. And I'm going to come up here to import a component or 3D model. I'll click that icon and navigate to the folder I have that model stored in. Here is my STL file. And I'll select it and click Open. And that's going to bring us into this interface here for the importation. Now, if you're used to the old importation form, you'll notice this is a lot smaller than it used to be. And we have these axes markers out here. This first screen is simply initial orientation and sizing. We'll get into positioning and importing it in the next screen. Right here we have a wireframe visualization of our material. Now up here in initial orientation, this is based on the orientation of the STL file when the model was created. This has nothing to do with the way we want to display it. Now, as it happens, this model has displayed with the top of a bottle cap facing up, but it could just as easily have been imported like this. It just depends on how this model was saved in the 3D modeling program it was created in. So here is where we can change the orientation. We can flip it over to the bottom, look at the left side, the right side, and the back. I want to orient it from the top. Now, down here, we can rotate this model around the Z-axis. If we look here, we have this whitish, grayish ball in the center. That represents our Z-axis. And it's not going to be very visible because this is a uniform piece. I can rotate it 90 degrees. I can rotate it 180 degrees from that rotation in the negative direction, or I can do it in the positive direction. This would be more apparent if there were some form of marking out here that we could track and follow. Well, these are presets to rotate around the Z from the top. We'll go ahead and set it back to 0 because that's how I want to import it. Where these axis representations come in is we can rotate it, make fine adjustments here using these 3 rings. And if you notice, when I put my cursor over a ring, it highlights yellow. So that is normally red, this is normally blue, that's normally green. But I can do some fine tuning. Let's kind of rock it back a little bit here. If I put my cursor over this green circle and left click, I can adjust like so, do some fine adjusting. If I go for the blue, I can turn it like so. And if I go for the red, I can bring it front to rear. Now, I'm going to change that. I'm going to go back to straight Z. And that puts it nice and flat to my material. Now, here in the model size, you'll notice I have lock XYZ ratio checked. If I need to increase or decrease any of these sizes, what it's going to do is keep this in perspective. It is obviously a round shape, so my width in X is the same as the height in Y. But if I should come in and change this to make it 10.0 inches tall, you see that this one changed and this changed as well. If I click Apply, that will change the size of the model as it imports. If I were to uncheck this and then change this back to 9.0, you'll notice this one doesn't change and this one doesn't change. Click Apply, and now I've got kind of an oblong. Well, I'm going to undo that because I don't want it to be an oblong. Whoops, extra decimal. Click Apply, and I'll lock my XYZ ratio. Now, if you should happen to import a 3D model that is absolutely tiny or absolutely huge, you may be dealing with different units of measure. This is right now 10 inches in diameter. If I switch over to millimeters, it's now 10 millimeters in diameter. So if I switch back to inches, now we're back to the 10-inch diameter. So if you import a model that's absolutely tiny, it may have been drawn in imperial. You'll switch your units over to millimeters, then click Scale Millimeter Inches. Let me demonstrate. We've imported this, and it comes out real tiny. We know we don't want a 10 millimeter bottle cap, so I'll click Scale Millimeter Inches, and what it has done is it's brought it up to the metric equivalent of 10 inches. By the same token, if I import it and it's absolutely huge, and I can't even see the wireframe of my material, and I see how big this is, I don't want a 254-inch model. I'll just click Scale Millimeter to Inches, and we are down to the appropriate size in imperial measurements. So if you import a model that's absolutely huge, it was probably drawn in metric. If you import a model that was just tiny, it was probably drawn in imperial. And they've made it much, much easier to scale that to the correct size. If we look at our model along the edge here, we see that it's sitting proud of our material. What I want to do is I want to center the model. and that brings the model down to inside the wireframe of the material. Applying perspective on the Z-axis, let me move this around here a little bit so you can see it. By adjusting the perspective of the Z, we can see how it brings up the center of the Z, but it makes for steeper edges out here. You're thickening up the tallest point is basically what you're doing. Now, personally, I don't use that. I haven't come across a situation where I've needed that, but I can see where it would come in handy. I'll go ahead and I'll turn that off because I don't want to change our Z. We have an option down here to import a segmented 3D model. That's going to be outside of the scope of this video. I will cover segmenting the importation of a 3D model in a separate video later on. So with our orientation taken care of, our size taken care of, we've got it centered in our material, we're going to move on to the position and import of the model. Now this form here used to be a part of that first form. They moved it to a second form to help eliminate a little bit of confusion. Right now we can see that some of this model is this nice bold bluish turquoise color, but then we have this purple gray flat plane here. In this form and in this form only, they refer to this as a zero plane. This is actually the modeling plane. The model is going to be built on top of this plane right here. So what we'll want to do is position the model relative to that plane. Now we can see here that this gray plane goes through the center of our model horizontally. So we want to bring this up to get the most detail and get the most of our model to import. But if we look down here, we have a lot of jagged edges. I don't necessarily want to import that. I'd like to import down to this black line right here where it changes from blue to red. So I'm going to use this slider and I'm going to bring this down. I am moving the modeling plane until it's right about that line. It doesn't have to be perfect. Use your own judgment on this. I mean, I can zoom in and try to get it right on top of that black line, but it doesn't necessarily have to be there. Use your judgment. You know what looks good to you. If you need to get it down perfectly because there's a detail on the edge here, then by all means do so. I don't necessarily need that here. So we'll go ahead and rotate it back up so we can see the whole thing. We're seeing that the depth below the top, referring to the top of the model, is a little over 1/2 inch thick. This is not where we adjust the thickness of the model. That'll be done later back here in the modeling tab. This is just getting this model imported. If we were doing a two-sided project, we would want to check create both sides. That way we had both sides of the model. And I'll demonstrate that in another video down the road. For here, I want to discard the data below the zero plane. What that means is when it imports, everything below this modeling plane right here is going to be discarded. So all of this rough, jagged area down below will not be imported. It'll be a clean slice all the way across the bottom. Now here we have an option to highlight any undercuts. The software does not like undercuts. So I can click that and I don't see any undercuts. this entire area would be an undercut. But because we're discarding everything underneath this modeling plane, that's not an issue. So, zoom back out, go back into this view. Now, if there were undercuts that I had to concern myself with, I could adjust either the position of the model relative to the modeling plane, or I could go back and change my orientation or change my sizing so that it better reflects a clean carve to get rid of some of those undercuts. I don't need to do that. This is a fairly simple model. So I'll go back over to position and import. It has saved all of the settings I had set. After making any changes to the model, I would highlight undercuts again and then click update undercuts. It would go through and check it out. So I don't need to worry about any undercuts. I don't have any in this model. And I'll go ahead and click import. That has taken me into the 3D view, and I can see now that I have a nice clean model imported that I can now work with. I can select it, go into the properties, and now is when I would change my model thickness. If I wanted this to be 5/8 of an inch tall, I would set it to 5/8 and then tap the equals button to give me the decimal equivalent of 5/8 of an inch. I could adjust my base height if I need to. I don't need to in this case. It looks good. And just do any other changes, any fade I want to add, any tilt I want to add to it. But this looks good as is. I'll go ahead and close it. And now I'm ready to start calculating toolpath. If I discovered that I made a mistake, if I imported it in the wrong orientation, you used to have to select this model and delete it. That is no longer the case. Now I can just come right over here to bottle cap in the component tree, right click, come right down here, re-import. Click on that and it would take me right back to that import 3D model. I come back over here, change my orientation, change the size, etc. Go back into position. Now I don't need to do that because I had a good clean model, so I'll just click cancel. And now we're back into the modeling tab. So, those are the basics. That is how to import an STL file in VCarve Desktop, VCarve Pro, and Aspire. So that's it. That's how simple it is to import an STL file into VCarve Desktop, VCarve Pro, and Aspire version 11.0 and newer. Now, undoubtedly, some of you will have some questions. So this afternoon at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, I'll be hosting a live Q&A session right here on my channel where we can discuss anything I've demonstrated in this video or any of my other videos. Again, that's this afternoon at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, right here on my YouTube channel. And I put a link to that live Q&A session down in the description box of this video. Now, these live Q&A sessions are a great reason to go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you're not already a subscriber. And when you click that red subscribe button, click that little bell icon right next to it. Then click it a second time and set that menu to all notifications. Then you'll get a notification the next time I post a video and the next time I go live. I would also like to give a special shout out and say a special thank you to my channel members, which you'll see scrolling up the side of the screen here. If you would like some information on how to become a channel member, just click the little join button right next to that subscribe button, and you'll be given all the information you need on how to become a channel member if you'd like to. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up for this video. And as always, whether you subscribe to my channel or not, whether you become a channel member or not, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to watch, and y'all take care.